Welcome to Season 5 of the Long-Winded One podcast. Listen as we showcase original work from top Royal Road authors read by professional voice actors. Hear interviews from your favourite lit RPG and game lit authors. Lastly, listen as the Long-Winded One tries his hand at his first ever lit RPG novel, The Four Treasures.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of The Long-Winded One. This season we're focusing on lit RPG and game lit, and I have the pleasure of speaking with someone who goes by the pseudonym The Irregular on Royal Road. He says we can call him Sayl. So I'd like to welcome you to the podcast, Sayl.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be invited, and it's my first time doing something like this for a podcast, so I'm excited.
We're excited to have you, and we're excited to learn about your story, Beauty in Simplicity. I want to give you a little bit of a shout out here. I'm looking at your Royal Road page here, and you have over 100,000 views. You have close to 1,000 followers. But more than anything, it's your overall scores that are so impressive. It's almost 5-star across the board. It's incredible. We're going to ask you questions about this story. We're going to ask you questions about your past and sort of what led you to writing this story. And then we're going to ask you at the very end of the podcast, we're going to ask you to introduce your work because we're going to have a narrator named Jenna Kane read your work for us in the next episode. Does that sound good to you?
Yep, sounds perfect.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm from the Netherlands. I grew up in a small village, but we moved to the States for a while. I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for about 3-4 years, which kind of influenced what I wanted for a job. So when we came back, I almost started high school the year after, and then I liked sports, but baseball wasn't something that was local in my area. I come from a rural village, so we don't have a lot of city sports. We had soccer and tennis, which was about the only thing within a 8-mile radius that you could do. Yeah, I wanted to do some more sports, but then I did high school, went to the nationals with our baseball team there. To be fair, we sucked. we we got 7th out of 7 people that joined, but still, I didn't have high hopes for our team because the practice wasn't too serious compared to what I'm used to. And then a few years later, after I finished high school, I wanted to join the army, so I went through an army education, and then at the end, like the last 2 weeks before I'd finished basic, I got hit with a disease, and I got lasting chronic exhaustion from that. So I could no longer join the army because they don't allow non-healthy people to join. So I had to find an alternative. So I went through various different educations to try to find out what I wanted to do. I started picking up creative hobbies, like I started playing the guitar, and I started editing videos. I tried drawing, but everything kind of fell off after a few months. Like I'd work at it, and then I'd get bored. And then eventually I fell into writing. I decided to try and write a book. And to my own actual surprise, my first book, I got around 300 pages done before I got bored. And I was like, that's not bad. I'm like, I kind of like this. But I still had trouble actually finishing books because I had too many ideas in my head. So I kept jumping from one thing to another.
So you knew after the 300 pages you said that maybe writing was keeping your attention more than some of these other activities. Is that right?
Yeah, I thought I actually have a chance of doing something with this, like this might have potential since I couldn't really hold on to a normal job. So that's where I tried to keep it.
That first story, the 300 pager, was that on Royal Road or was that just like a private story that you wrote for yourself?
No, that was in Royal Road. It's called The Life of a Soldier, I think, which was on a different account than the one I'm using now. And I lost access to it after I lost that email. So I made a new account, and that's how I got the Irregular.
Let's go back a little bit. Before you picked up the pen or the keyboard in this case, did you do much reading?
Oh yeah, my family is pretty big on reading. My parents actually got me started on Harry Potter. Like my mom would used to read the books to me, but then she'd always stop every night, like after only a chapter or so. And she did that to entice us to start reading for ourselves. Like we'd take the book and then start reading on our own. And I think the biggest authors in my youth were Terry Goodkind and Robert Jordan from the Wheel of Time and the Sword of Truth series.
All right, well tell us about how you ended up on Royal Road. And it sounds like you've been on Royal Road for a number of years. How did you discover Royal Road?
That is a very good question. I think I got on it by just looking for more fictions. I think I remember reading Terror Infinity, which was a Chinese novel from way back when, and started like the game jumping genre, where somebody like they go to Naruto, get the Sharingan, and then at the end of whatever quest they had, they move on to Harry Potter, get a wand, etc. And I think when I was looking for stories that were similar but were better written, like with actual English instead of translated Chinese.
Looks like you have a number of stories here. How has your experience been on Royal Road? It looks like it's been pretty positive.
Yeah, I like it. Like it was where I started writing. Like first I joined. There were still like clubs back then. Like you had the people of the Vow of the Ink that vowed to finish their stories, and then you had other groups of people. I think that was disbanded a few years ago. But when I first wrote, like I started Life of a Soldier, and I had some other writers comment on it, and then back then we had I guess, a club that people would join, and then a few people would sit in, and if they judged your writing quality high enough, then you could join, which the group was called Phantasmal Architects at the time.
Sounds a little bit like the Inklings, if you're familiar with that group, C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, I guess it is, except we're not nearly that big, unfortunately. Maybe one day.
I guess I didn't really get into the subcultures inside of Royal Road. You're telling me there are clubs within Royal Road that you can join. Are they usually taken offline, like or like do you get invited to a Discord? How does that work?
Well, there is a writers Discord for a fact, the Silver Pad, which I'm in, but I don't actually use that much. And then there are other smaller Discords, like just writers who get along. And this was actually an in Royal Road group that it was more forum like back then. But I think that was disbanded because of disagreements. Because I can remember one of our leader guys had a good a good amount of arguments with Wing and Canada, and I don't know. Eventually, the whole club thing was disbanded.
I don't know if this is you, but I've noticed that a lot of times people on Royal Road will build up a following there and then they'll form a Patreon. Does that sound familiar? I mean, do you have a Patreon? Is
Yeah, I do have a Patreon. Like you have, in my opinion, you have two kind of writers. Like you have the ones that publish on Amazon or something similar that actually publish their books and then they remove it online. And then you have writers, of which I'm one. Like we write online, we keep everything free, but then we have like 10 chapters that you can read ahead at a premium. So like you subscribe, then you get to read ahead. Yeah, that's how our side earns money instead of with book sales.
have you ever thought of like self-publishing or doing like an audiobook?
I have thought about publishing, but the first problem is that I'd actually need to finish a book because I keep starting new ideas, which is a problem.
In the story that we're going to hear in the next episode, Beauty and Simplicity, how close would you say you are to finishing that work?
I'd say the end of the arc was pretty close. Like I had one more main idea I wanted to finish off before cutting off or ending the book. So I'd say maybe another 100 pages and I'd have been done.
Before we even hit record, you actually had some good advice for me. So I'm interested if you would have any advice for new or aspiring writers.
I'm passionate about quality. Like I I like writing and I like emotion. For me is the most important part of writing. So my first book I started, I just wrote with what little knowledge I had, And then the second book I wrote, which was, I think, the Irregulars, I started to do, I did more planning and I had the idea solidified. But then the book after that, which is Binary Blood, I think, I just tried writing completely out of hand, like without any planning and see where it went. And then when that idea stopped, I started Beauty and Simplicity, which I wanted to see how far I could get with writing a good book without any combat in it. Because I always thought I was pretty good at combat, but how far could I get on just character interaction, character development, and that kind of growth? And like focusing on an area to improve for each of those books helped me get better, in my opinion, at least.
Write what you are interested in and write what you're passionate about. Sounds like that's what I would take away from what you just said.
Yeah, definitely. I'd also try to find people who are honest critics, but they aren't too harsh. like people who tell you like this is good, but this would make it better. Like constructive criticism.
We're going to hear a piece called Beauty and Simplicity, read by Jenna Kane. And I was wondering if you could set the scene for us for this particular chapter.
Okay, so our main character, called Eric, he suddenly drops into a new world, but he decides he does not want to be the classical adventurer. He has no fighting instinct. It's not his kind of thing. So he joins a tailor shop instead. And then he starts making clothes. He starts growing, gaining levels as people tend to do in game lit or lit RPG. And then he in this in the part that's going to be read for us by Jana, he finally makes his first custom piece, not something standard like the standard clothing everybody wants, but a custom wedding dress. And he, for the first time in his life, he gets truly lost in his creative instincts, and that's what the chapter will be about.
This sounds a lot like Legends and Lattes. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Oh, you might want to pick it up. Just take a look. It's about this retired orc who wants to form like a coffee shop.
That does sound like something I'd enjoy reading.
Sayl, can you tell us if we're looking for you on social media or any of the things you've mentioned, Patreon, Royal Road? Where would we find you?
Royal Road. That's about it. I'm horrible on social media. Like I have a Discord which I'm pretty active on, and on Royal Road I interact with my readers quite a bit. But yeah, I don't do Twitter. I don't have Facebook. I don't have Snapchat, Instagram, none of that.
Good for you. That's good. That's a good thing. Thank you for coming on the podcast tonight. We will look forward to listening to Beauty and Simplicity.
Thank you for joining us down this Lit RPG deep dive. Please consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts and visit us over at longwinded.one, where you can see past episodes and find all of our socials, even our new Discord server. We hope you enjoy.